Good evening. He had just returned to his hometown of Washington, D.C. to be the general manager for the basketball teams at a charter school. Tonight, Syracuse fans everywhere are mourning the sudden death of one of the greatest players to wear orange. Lawrence Moten is Syracuse's all-time leading scorer. He played at SU from 1991 to 95, averaging more than 19 points a game for his career playing for Jim Boeheim. His cause of death has not been revealed. Moten was also a fixture on the Orange Zone podcast produced by CNY Central. A few months ago, he made headlines well beyond the podcast when he said the reason Syracuse was behind in name, image, and likeness funding is because it broke with scrap metal tycoon Adam Weitzman.
The major loss that we did was losing Adam Weitzman. He was that big piece that we needed to keep this thing fluctuating and keep it going. You know, we talk about a guy who brought in Tom Brady, from Jalen Hurst to Gronkowski, Allen Iverson. You know, he had the funds, and all he wanted to do was be a part of this university and this organization that we have. And we dropped the ball. I'm gonna keep it real. We dropped the ball.
Hall of Fame former coach Jim Boeheim said this is a tragic day for the Syracuse basketball family. He called Lawrence Moten one of the most underrated college basketball players of all time. Boeheim said on the court that Lawrence Moten made it all look easy. We start our live coverage with Hannah Devaney. She's live on the SU Hill on Marshall Street tonight.
Michael, given that Lawrence Moten was only 53 years old. His nickname is one of the greats, Poetry, as in Lawrence Poetry in Moten. The smooth play and style of number 21 with his socks always pulled up to his knees made Moten an iconic figure in Syracuse sports. His legacy on the court only matched by those who knew him off of the court. He coached and mentored children throughout Central New York and the city of Syracuse, a place that was truly his second home after arriving here out of high school in 1991.
It's just very sad to see someone at such a young age lose their life. You know, he's been a fixture in the community ever since he was a player here. He's from the heyday when basketball was rocking and rolling and going to the NCAA tournament every year, and he's just a fixture. You know, I just remember him. He was one of those players that was kind of silky smooth. He didn't overwhelm you athletically, but somehow he managed to get it done. You know, at the end of the day, you look at the stat sheet and he always had, you know, leading scorer and a lot of rebounds and assists. He was just a very steady, solid player.
Moten lived here in Syracuse for most of the past decade, just leaving last month to go back to his hometown in Washington, D.C., where he got a job helping run a basketball program at a prep school. Always giving back, especially to children. In Syracuse, I'm Hannah Devaney.
Hannah, thank you. His nickname was Poetry in Moten, and it came from one of his fans. When his jersey was retired in 2018, Moten told us it was a fan named Mary Rose who wrote the phrase on a bed sheet and would hold it up. Moten was known as a smooth scoring guard who would glide around the court. That sign was first noticed by a teammate who told Moten about it, and he remembered introducing himself to Mary Rose and thanking her for it. She had died by the time Syracuse University retired his number 21 jersey. And our team coverage continues now with sports director Samantha Croston to talk more about the life and the legacy and really getting to know Lawrence Moten, because he was on the Orange Zone podcast. There's a reason your podcast turned to him for perspective. What was it?
Well, I think ultimately when you're thinking about Lawrence Moten, his life, his legacy here, he's someone who mattered a lot to this community, but it's not just for reasons that were on the basketball court. I think he's also someone who mattered to this community. He's someone who gave back to children. He has the kind of personality that not a lot of athletes or necessarily people really have.
And he wasn't afraid to break with the official line of either Syracuse University or Syracuse University Athletics, because what we just heard, hearing his voice talk about that huge, really it was a seismic breakup with Adam Weitzman, who was, you know, very close to that program. And for him to go on your podcast and say that had legs well beyond, the walls of this studio and Syracuse in general.
Yeah, I remember putting that clip on Twitter when he said it, and it really did. It made waves across the entire Syracuse community because I'm sure you remember, with Adam Weitzman, there were people who felt one way, people who felt a different way.
Sure.
Should the university have stayed with him? Should he have not? That's one thing that I appreciated about Moten, though, is that he was an opinionated person, and he wasn't afraid to voice that opinion. Sometimes that didn't necessarily align with what everyone in the university thought, but he was okay with that, and I appreciated that.
It's a small town, it's a small athletics community. Talk to me about the podcast today.
And by the podcast today, you mean just without him being there?
Know who you spoke with.
Oh, well, the podcast today we were discussing with Mungro. James Mungro, he's a former Syracuse running back who ultimately, I actually didn't know this until today, he actually knew Moten because they had worked together previously, just for a brief period of time. But he spoke with me a little bit on the podcast about exactly what Mungro or what Moten's influence was on him and what kind of person he thought he was.
He had patience. I mean, that's a big thing, working with kids, having patience. And he just had that type of charisma about him that, he always had a smile on his face, and he loved SU gear. He had his SU gear on all the time, and just a good friend and just a good human being, a good person for the community.
I really think that Mungro summed it up there. Good friend, good person, good for the community, not to mention a great broadcasting voice, which is something that I say all the time. That was a voice that I could listen to for forever.
We're thinking about his family and his close friends, that's for sure. Samantha, thank you.